So we're doing Janet's favorite kind of painting, no drawing. And let's get to the painting part here. This is in the woods that is kind of directly behind the house here. In very early fall when everything starts to change. And as I was telling Denise before on how we build the painting, you are always working large areas to small and background to foreground to start with. And then you're working your values lighter and then to darker. And then you're working your colors more intense. So this is going to be very abstract looking at the beginning. It's not going to make a whole lot of sense, but I'm looking at the patterns of simply the lights and the darks, not concerned about the tree trunks or the branches, just the largest areas. So there's two ways to work with watercolor. You can work wet on dry paper. In other words, I don't wet the paper, or you can work on wet pigment on dry paper, or wet pigment on wet paper. Now, it depends on how much wetness you want to add to the paper. I am going to wet the paper so that the watercolor flows. So I'm going to lightly wet the paper with this spray here, and I'm just spritzing the paper just a little bit. Not a lot, and I'm only going to go down to right about here. This I'm going to remain dry, and I'll bring the water down with me as we move. Now I'm going to take the, you always work with your largest brushes and go to your smaller brushes as you move through. So I'm going to be working with my cat tongue brush from Rosemary and my Chinese calligraphy brush. And I'm going to take we're using the ultramarine blue, the manganese blue, excuse me, and the sap green, burnt sienna, and the yellow medium. So those are our colors that we're using. And we don't need to use a lot of color. So I'm going to take the yellow here, and quite a bit of it, and a little bit of the green to start with. And because we don't have anything in there that's pure yellow, and I'm going to begin by painting in, and you're going to see that it will start traveling. And I don't worry about the white spots on the paper. Those will be eliminated as we move through this. Take a little bit more yellow, take a little bit more green. And I'm going to take a little bit of the manganese blue, which is our coolest blue, and that will start to give us a little bit different look on things here. And I can work the watercolor a little bit more in a timely fashion when it's wet. When it's wet on dry, your painting time is kind of brought down. And as I move to the left over here, or to the right, I'm going to be adding a little bit more color. And I'm adding the ultramarine blue to get to a little bit darker hue. And I'm going to let that blend in. So the idea on this, Denise, is to allow the watercolor to move where it wants to. Don't try to control it, because then you'll end up having problems with the watercolor itself. Now, it's the first time I've rinsed out the brush. I don't rinse it out enough, or a lot, I mean. And I'm going to take a little bit more of the ultramarine blue here with a little bit of the burnt sienna, a lot more green, and a lot more ultramarine blue, a little bit of water. And I want to make this a little bit more dark in here. And I'm just painting the patterns, letting it go where it wants to. I don't have any intention of trying to control it. I'm going to take a little bit of this color with the yellow and the green and start painting in a downward fashion. And I'm painting in different directions. Don't paint in one direction. I'm painting in different directions. And what I'm going to do is that you take the toothbrush, and I'm going to spritz a little bit of water down in here just to make the watercolor flow a little bit more. That way I'm not adding a lot of color to this, or a lot of water. And I'm going to take a little bit more yellow here, and I'm going to add that in down here, like so. And then I'm going to take the green, the sap green with the manganese blue, which is our coolest blue that we ever use. And I'm taking big sweeps across like so. And then I'm going to take the burnt sienna, and I rinse my brush out only for the second time, and take the burnt sienna, and I'm going to add it in with the green. I take a little bit of this here to gray it down just a touch. And I'm going to enter those parts of the ground that have the leaves from the previous fall on them. And I'm just painting where I see this going. Now, one more thing is I'm going to take some water, and I want to see a little bit of this kind of spread a little bit more. So I'm just taking water to spread it. And then I'm going to take the, let's see, a little bit of the green here with the ultramarine blue. And there's a few spots in here that I want to bring in a little bit more darkness in here and there. There's not a lot of pigment on my brush at this point. So where it flows is where it flows. We don't worry about it. And then very last thing I'm doing is I'm going to take the toothbrush cleaned up, and I'm going to take just the yellow. And you want to hold the brush, got a lot of water, you want to hold the brush straight up, okay, like so. And you're going to point and shoot. And I'm going to add more color to this in here. It will blend with what we already have wet on the paper. So there's no need to worry about it moving around. It's getting fairly dry. But this is the pattern in which I am looking for at this point. And I'm going to pull this up so that you can see it up closer. Let's see if I can move that up just a little bit. There we go.
And what colors are you using with the toothbrush?
I was using the yellow up in here in the last spritz.
Okay.
Before that, I was using just the water with the toothbrush to make the watercolor move a little bit more.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
I wet this much area first with the spray thing, and then I started adding yellow with a little bit of the green in it, and I started adding more yellow. Then I added the manganese blue through here a little bit, and a little bit of the sap green, and I started going down. So the forest floor gets darker as it goes down because it's receiving less light. And then I started adding a lot of sap green over here with the ultramarine blue and a little bit of the burnt sienna. And then I mingled in some of this green here. And then I added more of the green down, yellow green down here. Then I added first the blue green down here, and then I added the burnt sienna, which signifies the dead leaves from the previous fall. I may use a hair dryer on this, but I'll wait. And I still have to, I'll take a picture of it when it dries. But keep it simple. Don't overbrush it. Big sweeping brush strokes. And don't try to chase the watercolor along. Leave it flow where it wants to. Those shiny spots you see are still wet. So that's got nothing to do with the color of the watercolor. They will go away as it dries. But all this 2/3 or 3/4 of the paper was wet before I started so that the watercolor will flow and mingle. That's what it does best. Leave it do what it wants to do. Did you hang your painting up, Janet, yet?
Okay, Gail, let's try to look
No,
at my,
but we found a place. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, Judith.
let's see if I can, actually, I need to change my,
Bring this
view.
over a little bit more.
Yeah, hang on, let me get to gallery, there we go.
The rest of it looks pretty good, but bring some of this color over, dilute it a little bit more over to here.
Okay, more green, yellow, and this,
Yeah, more of the green.
look at that. I'm sorry about that video. Okay, there we go again.
Who knows why? It's the Russians.
There's mine.
All right, that's fine. That was quick.
Well, I painted with you. I thought I'd do something different.
Okay, that works well if you can do that. I've had several students do that. I'm going to go ahead and dry this a little bit. Be closer to start. Once you're done on this, Denise, that's where you put your brush down and sit on your hands. Don't play with it.
Okay.
Okay. That was one of my bad habits as a student.
Oh,
I very seldom use the hair dryer, Denise, but during demos I do use it. Usually I'll sit there and watch it dry.
okay.
So are you finished with the first phase or you're almost there?
I think I'm pretty much there.
Is it too wet to hold up?
I can't, my board is too big to hold up. I'll have to get a different board.
Okay. We'll go with that today then. So I just like to check and see where you're at.
Uh-huh.
Call the Marines in.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Let's go to the second phase. Now,
Did you take a picture?
I will. I always clean off my tray every time, my mixing tray, because I don't want my color getting dirty. So I try to keep that very clean. And then I'll take a picture of this so we know where we started. and we'll travel on. Now, the next phase of the painting, and I try to break this down into more phases than I would paint so that it's easier to follow along. We're going to go back to the background and start working forward again. I'm probably going to bring it right up to this point here, and then I'll deal with this in the next portion. I'm going to start off on the right-hand side because that is fairly dark over here, and it shows a little bit of light twinkling down through here. And then I'm going to come across the paper, and I'm going to handle this very softly in here because you gotta kind of tease in and try to look at what's there and put in the things that are very important and leave out things that are not. So it's always more important what you leave out than what you put in. I'm getting paint all over my hands for some reason today. There we go. So I'm going to take the Chinese calligraphy brush, or if you have a number 10 or 12 round, it's the same thing, basically. And I'm going to take the ultramarine blue this time first, and the sap green. And I want to get that fairly dark. So I'm going to take a lot of ultramarine blue and a little bit of the burnt sienna just to get that darkness in there. Now we're going to be dry brushing a number of things here. And let me see if I have a scrap piece of paper. Yes, I do. Somewhere here. When you're dry brushing things on this, Denise, I don't add a lot of water. I'm kind of doing this with it so that you're not covering everything, okay? And if you want it drier, you can tap it off on the paper towel and you can get it a little bit drier. So that's initially what I'm doing. So I'm going in and I'm going to start to paint up in here. And my objective is not to cover everything I originally put down. Very seldom do you. But I want to try to show a little bit of texture. I want to show a little bit of depth this way. So I'm trying to show that in this respect that we're seeing through the woods. Now, every 5-6 brush strokes or so, I change the color or the temperature or the value of things. I'm painting in different directions, not in one. And then I'm going to add a little bit of water to this and lighten it as it goes down. I'm going to dry the brush off. And I want to be able to show enough of this down here. And we slow our process down. We don't, the first part is always fairly fast. But here we're slowing it down for the reason I don't want to cover too much too quickly. And I lighten the pigment with water as I come out to the open area here. And I'm teasing in where I'm seeing some of the major darks, not all the little ones, but the major darks. So I'm showing some of the foliage through here with the yellow and so forth. Now, I'm going to take the manganese blue and I'm going to add it to this pigment here and a little bit of the yellow. And I'm going to tap the brush off and I'm going to begin or continue painting. It's just a little bit of change. I'm going to lighten it up a little bit, add a little bit more yellow. And I keep on changing the pigments as we move through. So we have a lot more yellow in the pigment. And I'm going to add a little bit more of the manganese to this because we get a little bit cooler as we move down. And we're going to be adding more yellow to it soon. And I'm going to take a little bit of the manganese with the toothbrush here. with a little bit of that yellow green in it. And I'm going to spritz that color down at the bottom, which is cooler. And then I'm going to take a lot more yellow. Tap the brush off and start working from the bottom to the top. And I'm looking at this line here that is the vertical movement of the woods to the horizontal plane of the ground. And I'm teasing in all this so I don't lose the light that is there. And then I'm going to add a little bit more of that color I mixed up with the manganese. And I'm making sure that this line here has a rhythm movement to it so it's not flat. Nothing is flat in the woods anyways. So I add a little bit more manganese to this. And I'm just painting patterns that I'm seeing in the woods of lights and darks and some of the midtones. So a lot of this has been dry brushed in, and I'm kind of teasing all these things in here. And I'm going to take a little bit of the burnt sienna, and I'm going to add that, not a lot, but I'm going to add that to the green here because we got a little bit of rust color showing here and there of when the leaves start to change. And then I'm going to take a little bit more yellow, keeping the toothbrush loaded with the burnt sienna. Tap it off on a paper towel, and then continue with almost pure yellow. And again, painting in different directions so that it's just like the leaves go in different directions. You want to paint with the movement of the leaves in this case. And I'm going to take a little bit more of what's on the toothbrush here that's leaking all over the place. And I'm going to add a little bit more of the burnt sienna up in the leaves here, just a little bit. And I'm going to add some down here on the ground. And that helps gray that down just a little bit or tone it down. Now, I will tell you, your scene is going to come out a little bit different, which is fine than what I'm doing or what the photograph is doing or is telling you. You have to remember nature is very forgiving. And if something is not exactly the same way, that's fine. But you want to be able to look at simply the primary patterns and the secondary patterns of what's there. So now it's beginning to take a little bit more shape. So I started off over here with the ultramarine blue, the sap green, a little bit of burnt sienna. This is my darkest dark over in here. I will add a few more darks, but I'm looking at big things. And then I started adding more of the sap green and the yellow to it. So I'm adding a lot more yellow with a little bit of the green, and I added the manganese down towards the bottom. Then I spritzed a little bit of the burnt sienna up in the area here and a little bit down here. Now, before I would end anything, I'm going to take a little bit of water with my brush, and I'm going to soften some of these hard edges. We want to keep our edges as soft as we can for as long as we can. So I'm just going to go along and soften that so that no hard edges are showing, because they'll attract the eye in the wrong way. And once it dries, I'll take a picture of it. And I'm going to go clean my sponges out and I'll be right back.
Oh, when I turned on one of those lights that you screw in with the 3 lights, the change. One of those crazies. Oh, you know, like, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I thought I grabbed that.
That came out of the fixture itself.
Yeah.
Any questions at all? Okay. Do you have any questions, Denise?
Not so far. I'm just trying to keep up.
Okay.
Dale,
Yes.
so this is what I have so far.
Okay. You can get your dark a lot darker over here with the
Oh, okay.
ultramarine blue, sap green, and a little bit of burnt cyan.
Okay, I can do that.
But a
Anything
lot-
else?
Yeah, a lot of ultramarine blue.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Let me get this thing stopped. There we go.
It's your internet somewhere
Or the camera.
or the camera.
Yeah, I have no idea how to make that camera behave.
A hammer.
That's about it.
My wife has more patience with that than I do.
Okay, Dale, I want to put this up again.
Yeah.
There we go. So,
That's much better. Now let it start taking a little bit more water with that color
okay,
and bleed it over into here.
okay, we'll do.
Ever
Thank
so
you.
slightly, just so there's a soft transition.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Hang on just a minute. Oops, So this is up here.
Yeah, I gotta pin it.
We're recording, right?
Yeah, we are.
Okay. There we go. That's better. Denise, do you have a toothbrush that you're using?
I don't. But I can get one.
Just take your husband's and clean it when you're done.
Okay. I'm
It
gonna
does,
grab one.
it does help for some of the effects with adding water or pigment to the painting.
Okay.
I'll wait for you. When I use it again, I'll show you how to use it again.
Okay.
Because we use it to soften color with a little bit of water or add color or even subtract color. So we're going to be doing all of the above today.
Alrighty. Okay. I'm back.
Okay, good. I forgot to ask you, Denise, what kind of tube paint are you using?
Kind of toothpaste,
Oh, tube, the paint.
tube
in the
paint.
tube. Yeah.
It came in a little set, and I'm gonna have to get some better paint.
What's the name of it?
Artist Loft.
Okay, that's student grade, and that will give you problems.
Okay.
Where'd you buy it from?
Where did you buy it from?
My husband got me, it's a set of watercolor and pencils and Hobby Lobby probably.
Okay. Hobby
I can-
Lobby usually doesn't have too many good things as far as professional quality paint.
Yeah.
They
I
have,
can go
they have Winsor
to
Newton, but
Omaha has a Dick Blick's up there.
okay, Dick Blick's name brand, house brand, is very
Uh-huh.
good paint.
Okay.
Very good paint. How far is Omaha from you?
About 55 miles probably.
Well, he can take you.
Not bad.
He can take you to lunch and take you shopping.
Yeah.
And tell me you want to go to a good place for lunch, not just a cheap burger
At
place.
McDonald's.
Oh. We've been up there and we like Zio's Pizza.
That sounds good. So how you
So
doing?
you're in Nebraska?
Yeah, both
Uh-huh.
both
Wow, you're
Oh.
far away.
both of them are, both Judy and Denise.
Wow. What's the weather like?
It's
Beautiful.
gonna be like 87 today.
No way.
Sun is
I've never been
shining,
there.
Warmer there than it is here.
light breeze, beautiful.
We should do a field trip. Go visit them.
Come on over.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. That'd be so fun.
So how's it look, Janet?
How does
Your paint?
Oh, am I supposed to be? I forgot all about that. Just kidding.
How long you been with me, dear? Okay.
No, you can't. The light is.
Yeah, we're getting a little spotty up in here with too many indications of what leaves might look like, and there are more pines in there. But we're gonna fix that later. Just leave it. All right.
You want me to just put some spray some water on it?
If it's still wet, yeah. All right. Let me get a picture of this, and then we'll continue.
Yeah, I'm using the paper you use, which I don't normally,
Yeah.
but apparently I wasn't using enough water with the paint because you wanted it more flowy, less.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. We're gonna go work into the ground and a little bit more up in here, and then we'll stop at that point. So down in the ground here, we got a lot more darks, and I'm going to do a lot of dry brushing on the ground. So you want to keep your brush tapped off on the paper towel more often. And we're going to get the ground a little bit darker because it's not receiving a whole lot of light. And I'm going to start off with the sap green and a little bit of the manganese here to cool it because it is cooler down there. There we go. And a little bit of the burnt sienna just to slightly gray it down. Since it is a red, it'll gray down the green. But I still want more blue in that. There we go. Now I'm going to add a little bit of water to that, like that, and so that I can tap off the brush here. And I'm going to begin by painting in some of these darks that I'm seeing at the bottom. And I'm also going to take the toothbrush with just water on. I'm going to point and shoot, and that will soften any of the brush strokes that I want softer. So we're going to a little bit smaller areas. We're handling things a little bit slower than we did at the beginning. And I'm going to take a little bit more manganese here and mix it in with the green. Add some water to it to loosen it up a little bit. And I'm going to be painting in here just a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the toothbrush with a little bit of yellow, and I'm going to spritz it back in here because we're receiving a little bit of light back in here. And then I'm going to take the manganese green that I just mixed up, and I'm going to spritz some of that in there so that it kind of diffuses and falls back a little bit. Then I'm going to take some of the burnt sienna, mix it in with the green. And I'm going to dry brush this in. A little bit more burnt sienna here and there. And I'm going to, I always try to keep moving from one area long until later on I'll be jumping around more, but I try to connect everything as much as possible to maintain that softness and edge. I don't want a lot of hard edges. That's why I have the toothbrush handy with the water in it, and I'll simply go along and soften things. Then I'm going to take this color here, add a little bit more ultramarine blue to it, and I'm going to darken this whole area up front here. I am still going to leave some of the original color show, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, without mixing it in on the palette, I'm going to take the manganese blue with the toothbrush, and I'm going to add the manganese blue to it, and it will automatically cool it as it disperses. And then taking a big sweep through here with the burnt sienna, like so. And again, I'm softening this a lot. This had a little bit of manganese in with it, but that's fine. I'm not concerned about the ferns or anything at this point. But we do need to get rid of that white spot down here. It's too big. And we'll work that area later with a little bit of detail, but not too much. I'm going to get rid of these white spots along the edge here. Now, I'm going to travel up, right up into here a little bit. I'm going to handle this whole area very softly. And I'm going to take the yellow with the manganese, a little bit more manganese, and I'm going to tease this in. Got a little bit of drip there. There we go. I'm going to actually clean the edge of the the board here so I don't have anything flowing back in. A little bit more water. So still trying to keep all the edges as soft as I can. I don't want to commit myself. I'll let my wife do that. And I'm going to take a little bit of the yellow straight brush, and I'm going to spritz it in here. And what happens is that it will blend or mingle with the color and change the color by itself. So I'm going to add a little bit more yellow in here. And then I'll start teasing the color up into the other trees up in here. And I'm looking at simply the patterns of things. And I'm not trying to cover a whole lot. I'm just molding. And I'll show a few more leaf structures up here that are a little bit more sharper looking. A little bit more yellow. And I'm going to take a little bit of the yellow and some of the burnt sienna, which will give us kind of a gold color. I want to brighten this area up just a little bit more. And I'm going to spritz this on with the toothbrush. So toothbrush is always upright. And I'm using my index finger and I'm pointing and shooting. Like so. Bring a little bit of that color down into the woods a little bit. Then go back to the brush. Take some of this green that's over here. Mix up a little bit more green with the manganese. There we go. And a little bit of the yellow here. So I keep on jumping back and forth from one color to the other. And I'm going to dry the brush off, and I'm going to paint in which the direction of the leaves are kind of hanging there. So I'm painting really my first harder edges at this point. I'm looking at the photograph, but I'm not overly concerned about exactly what's there at this point, just to get the feeling. So I'm adding some more manganese as I go down. Adding in a little bit over here. So the woods are starting to take shape, which is what I was aiming for. And I'm trying to make them a little bit more interesting than what is in the photograph. But I'm still looking at the patterns of things and following the larger patterns, not so much the smaller ones. And then I'll take a little bit of the yellow and I'll stop. Mixed in with a little bit of the green. And I'll lighten up a few areas in here. We got some areas down here that are a little bit lighter, receiving light. A little bit over here. And just a touch right in here and there. And that's where I'm going to stop this. This is going to get darker down here in the next phase, but I'm going to add some texture and value changes down here. And then this is going to get a little bit, I'm going to pull this dark out a little bit more later. But this is where we settled right here. So I started down here by adding some more, I started here by adding more yellow. Then I made a blue-green with the ultramarine blue and the sap green with a little bit of burnt sienna to gray it. And I covered most of this down here. And we got a little bit of water running there. And then I started going up with different varieties of the green, the yellow, the manganese, and a little bit of the burnt sienna, especially up in here and over here and there, so that we're getting a full view of the woods itself. And then we'll start molding it. And that shine on the paper right in here will go away as it dries. But you're starting to form some of the leaves in a dry brush manner. And sometimes we have to push and pull value to make it work.
Hey, Dale, I'm gonna put mine up again.
Okay, that's much better. Yeah.
Okay, so is there anything that I should be doing at this stage?
Nope, just starting to do what I did down here and then moving up.
I'm sorry.
For a while.
Isn't that crazy? Maybe if I punch it.
Hammer, I'm telling you.
Well, I did hammer it a little bit. Didn't really make any difference. Right. Okay. So
You're right.
on yours, point to where it is that I should be doing something else.
Well, you got to work down into here along with the ultramarine blue and the sap green and a little bit of sienna. And then I tried up forming the lights and dark subtleties up in there.
Okay.
With the green and the manganese blue and yellow.
Okay. Well, I've done, maybe I can put this up again. I think the top half is going to be okay as is.
Yeah.
The question is about,
Just need this over in here,
okay.
that dry brushing.
Okay. So more yellow in there for contrast?
Yeah, and yellow green.
Okay. Got it. Thanks.
We're starting to dry here now. I just have two spots that are glistening. Denise, you did get the supply list and all with
I did, yes.
that's
I kind of just thought I would start with what I had and see
Okay, all right.
how it
Yeah,
works.
take a trip to Dick Blick's
Yeah,
and get a pizza.
I'm gonna. If I can get mine, I've got this big brown splotch happen in the middle. Can you see it?
Hold it up a little bit more.
Okay.
All right, not too bad. Remember, this is your first one, so it's going to be a little bit on the rougher side,
Yeah.
as mine were when I started. Nothing's different. And I sat next to two advanced students when I was in class, which was I just sit there and stare at them painting and learned a little bit from them. Also, the instructor.
Uh-huh.
But it takes time. There's no question about it. But it
Mm-hmm.
will come with time, and you have to have good materials.
Yes. Okay.
And I advise against buying any Arches watercolor paper because it's not made the way it used to be.
Okay.
You want to buy either Fabriano or the Indigo. I do a lot of my shopping now through Amazon, and
Oh.
they have the
Mm-hmm.
Indigo watercolor paper, and I cut it in quarters. But the store that I used to shop at online was Cheap Joe's, and they just went out of business.
Oh.
He died 2 years ago, and the kids didn't want to run it. So it's like, okay. So now I use Amazon Prime, and I use Jerry's Artorama. I would use, which is
Okay.
out on the West Coast, but they're very reliable.
And rosemary for rosemary brushes.
And rosemary for rosemary brushes. Everything is on the list
Yeah.
if you need anything. Or you can always email me and ask. It's all for the same price.
Okay.
And if you can't find manganese blue, you can use cerulean blue.
Okay.
It's almost the same thing. It becomes an artist preference of what colors they like to use.
Mm-hmm.
Down to it, their opinion, and every artist has their opinion. I'm going to use the hair dryer while we're waiting.
Dale.
Yes.
So before we end, would you be willing to, are you able to display some of the um, water images you taught last week? I mean, you had one up when we started.
Yeah, I have another one here. This one's not quite finished, but that's one of them.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It needs more work down in here and a little bit in the background.
Yeah, isn't that great? Oops, there's a phone. I'm going to mute this.
But that is a waterfall just north of us here. I'll see if I can pull up the other ones on my iPad and see if you can see them. Let's see what we have here. This was another one.
Mhm.
You see that?
Yeah, that's just great. I really like all the water images. We did one last
Yeah, well, we'll be doing
session.
some. And this was
And,
this was the introduction demo I did
wow.
without a paint along. It's a swamp across the street from us, way back in the woods.
That's really nice. Yeah.
And you saw that. This is
Ha
another,
ha ha.
this is the first paint along we did.
Ha 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 ha.
That was
Very nice.
on one of the creeks over here.
Yeah.
And this was sent to me by a student that's from the Northwest area, Washington, and so forth. Has a
Lovely.
granite in the water.
Yeah, I love the blues and greens.
Yeah, but that's what we did basically. Trying to see if I had any more. Oh, and then I did a free form like what we're doing today
Yeah.
of the woods that's in the back here.
Nice. Nice. Yeah.
I wanted to show them how to be a little bit looser with their watercolor, and I did that on the second to the last day or the last day.
Uh-huh.
Show them something a little bit different in the procedures of things. And we had 2 all-day paintings, and we had one day where we did 2 paintings, and then the first day we did one in the afternoon as a paint along.
Uh-huh.
So Monday was a paint along in the afternoon, and then Tuesday was 2 paint alongs, and then Wednesday and Thursday was 1 all-day paint along so that they could get more to a finished state.
Yes. Good. Good.
And we sang and danced and told dirty jokes. So
Sure.
there was a small dance in between.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of fun. They learned a lot, and everybody that comes in is on a different level of experience. So it was a lot of fun that way. I had 3 people from Washington State,
Good.
1 from Arizona, Iowa, Ohio, Minnesota, Illinois, Indiana, 2 people from Indiana. So I had 14 people total. This next class in the fall is almost full. I've got 16 people with 2 empty seats at this point. I only take up to 18 because otherwise I can't get around to everybody that I want to.
And they put in 2 rooms.
Yeah, I don't want to be put in 2 rooms like I was twice.
Oh, no, I can't imagine that.
Yeah, I put on too many steps on my watch.
Wow.
And then I have certain people that like to hide in the back room.
Shake them out. Make them sit in front.
Oh, no, I can't do that. No.
Okay.
See, I didn't mention your name, Janice.
Janice.
Janet. Jeez, what's wrong with my English today? This next step, I'm going to be working even a little bit slower and honing down on the lower mass down here, a little bit more up here. And then we'll start putting in the trees on the next step. But the trees are always last because I'll put them in where they need to be, not where they are. And you have to remember, trees are not brown bark all the time. In fact, very little bit of the time. We took a long ride through the woods where they were logging in the last 3 years, and they had the logs piled up about 3 stories high, if not higher, and they're all gone. But we went up into the woods. They have equestrian trails up there.
Wow.
All the Norway pines or the red pines, the bark on them were red violet and blue violet with the light that we were looking at during the day. We went there later in the day. But now I found some more spots, some really neat looking swampy areas, and then some vistas that they've cleared out back there. How you doing, Janet? No, I know it's not true. All right, that's good. I like that. You want me to continue? Or wait a minute?
Well, is everybody else ready?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
well, then we should continue.
All right. I already got a picture of it. Now, the lower part has to be a little bit darker so that the horizontal plane separates from the vertical plane. And we're not receiving a whole lot of light down here. So I am going to first start up here. I want to bring out this dark. It's kind of hidden in the corner, and I want it to reach out a little bit more, different than the photograph. So I'm going to make that come out just a little bit more dry brushing. So, and I want to bring it down into here a little bit more. So I'm going to take that sap green and the ultramarine blue and a little bit of the burnt sienna to slightly gray it. So I want a nice blue-green that's fairly dark. There we go. And again, I'm going to be dry brushing, so I'm going to tap this off a little bit more. But I want this to stretch out just a little bit more. It's kind of hidden in the corner, so I'm going to run the boughs of the branches out a little bit more, darken this up. And then I'm going to kind of tease it down with a little bit lighter. I added a little bit more water to this, but I also want to bring this in here, dry brushing again to show another layer of pigment. Then I'm going to add a little bit more water to this so it lightens up. And I want to bring this down. So we have to come down to about here. And I'm going to tease this around some of the lights I put in that are kind of filtering through. And I'm going to add a little bit more green to that. And I'm going to add a little bit of the manganese blue to it, just to slightly cool it a bit. And then I'm going to start looking at the patterns of these darks down in here, and then a little bit worked up into there, but it's a matter of smaller areas, smaller handlings, slower handling, so that we don't go in and be overbearing on what's there. So I'm toning this light down there for the fact that I don't want to trap a light, that light between two darks, because it'll stick out too much. So I'm kind of teasing this in along through here. And then also up on top, there's these darks that separate some of this foliage down here. So I'm being conscious of everything that I possibly can be at this point before I commit to the tree trunks. And I'm always tapping the brush off, especially at this point, that I don't get too aggressive as you would at the beginning. So we're kind of sneaking up on things a little bit more at this point.
What are you adding?
I'm adding more ultramarine blue and sap green. And I'm adding a little bit more color down in this area here. I'm going to tip this up so I can see it a little bit better. And I'm adding smaller brush strokes. So I'm trying to be a little bit more careful. And I'm adding a few darks in these areas here, small brush strokes to kind of give that feeling of where the ground starts right along through here. And I'm going to take a little bit of the manganese here with the green. There we go. With lots of water. And I'm going to kind of tease in, dry the brush off a little bit more, and tease in some of these darks down in here that are a little bit cooler. Now, I'm going to take the toothbrush. I don't want this to be too hard edged down here. So I add a little bit of water. And I'm putting in some semi-important darks down here that will separate the further background, because darks will recede and lights come forward. And I'm trying to also break up the line that comes through here so that you're seeing it appear and then disappear. Then I'm going to take the burnt sienna here in a fairly dark form, and I'm going to try to dry brush this in a little bit darker form than what I originally put down. So I'm going to grab just a little bit more burnt sienna as it comes out into the light and make it a little bit more apparent of color, because in the light it receives more color, in the shadow it receives less. And I'm going to take the toothbrush and I'm going to take a little bit of that burnt sienna with a little bit of green in it to tone it down. And I'm going to start spraying that back in here as a texture. And then I'll manipulate it a slight bit with the brush. But that comes all the way across into the light and then comes over here and a little bit in the corner here. Now, you take your brush at this point after putting it down And you can then maneuver it a little bit if you have to, which I have to, like so. And dry brush this in on the side there a little bit. And I'm going to add a little bit down in here to tone this down. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to take the ultramarine blue with the green that's already grayed down. And I'm going to dry the brush off, and I'm going to add dry brush down in here to give the feeling of those ferns, but not too much. I don't want to have a fern painting. I want a forest painting. And I haven't got in to use the white yet because we are going to use the gouache, which I will explain that when we get there. So I'm going to add a little bit more manganese to this here because we're looking a little bit brighter in color. Like so. And it's starting to shape up, which I was hoping.
Okay. Dale, tell me the colors for the green that you're working with right now.
I'm using the manganese blue,
Yeah.
and the sap green, and a slight bit of the burnt sienna, which a red will gray the green down quite a lot.
Okay.
And I'm adding small accents of darks here and there. Like I said, I don't want to be adding too much. Now, I'm going to take the manganese with going to mix it right up in the same pile with a little bit of the green, a little bit of the yellow. So I've got kind of a bluish green here,
Okay.
maybe even more blue. There we go. And I'm going to brush that into the area alongside the tree here, and then down towards the bottom, just a little bit, so that we're seeing into the woods. And then I'm going to take it over here, and I'm going to dry brush a little bit over here. I'm going to take the toothbrush, making sure it's cleaned out, and I'm going to spritz this with water so that it kind of diffuses and gets rid of sharper edges. And I'm going to add some in here, which we have quite a bit in here. And again, more water to diffuse it. And then I'm going to take this darker dark that was right up in here with a lot of the green and the ultramarine blue, get a darker version of that. And I'm going to start by adding in some darker accents of darks that are going further back in the woods. And there's a lot of them, but I'm not putting all of them in. Like so. And then what I want to do is I want to have a little bit of a path running through here, right in this area. And I'm going to lift out with the brush a little bit of a path here. Just a feeling to get the eye moving through this area here so it transcends coming through there. And I'm just lightly lifting out. I don't want it to be a very sharp path. I want it to be a soft path. And just kind of diminish out into this area here. It's just something that will help lead the eye back in. It isn't in the photograph, but I'm adding it. like so. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start placing the trees in here, and I'm going to use the Chinese calligraphy brush. I'm going to clean off an area here. Now, the tree bark is going to have a lot of green in it because of what is surrounding the trees itself. So my base color will be green and blue. And I'm going to mix up a lot of it, and I'll keep on adding to it. So I'm going to take a little bit of the burnt sienna and just gray a little bit of it down. A little bit more green here, and a little bit more blue. There we go. And I'm going to start by adding this tree right in here. And I'm going to allow it to weave in and out of the foliage. So it's not going to be real sharp at the beginning. But it has a lot of green in it. And that's going
Is this wet brush right now?
This is what?
Wet brush?
Semi-wet. Yeah,
Semi-wet.
not real wet.
Okay.
And then I kind of soften the bottom of the tree so that it doesn't look like it's cut out and pasted on. Now I'm going to go into the darker area here. I added more of the ultramarine blue, and I'm adding a darker dark in here. And I want to add a bigger tree right back here and a smaller tree next to it. And a couple in the background here. And that I'm kind of hiding a lot of it from the foliage. So it's starting to take shape a little bit more. Now, as I come out into the light, I'm going to use a little bit more green, less blue, and a little bit of the burnt sienna. So it's going to warm up a bit. And I have a tree that kind of falls right back here. And I'm making it lighter. And I'm dry brushing it so that the foliage shows going across. And then it just sort of disappears and it comes out down here, like so. Like that. So this tree falls back because lights get darker, or darks get lighter as they go back. So I'm just getting into having the trees support all of this. Not worried about the branches. And if you go a little bit further, that's why God made paper towels. And I'm being conscious of the size of the trees and the spacing, that it doesn't look like they were planted on purpose. Now I'm going to take a little bit of the manganese here and add it to the green that I have. And I'm going to put another tree right over here, kind of weaving through the foliage. So you don't want to show the whole thing. Kind of disappearing here and there. So this kind of goes between those trees a little bit. All these trees that are up front here that are very dark, I'm going to be very careful of that because it can make this too heavy and it will fight with this. So I'm going to lighten those up and lessen the amount of trees. So I have a tree right here that I'm going to put in very quickly, all the way down to close to the foreground. That will show a little bit more depth. And I'm going to add a little bit of manganese to that, a little bit of blue that we had over here. And I'm going to put another one in right here that's even bigger. So I'm not trying to fight with that. So I'm being very careful not to make it the same value, same color. I'm going to add a little bit of brown to that. So it's a matter of balancing the trees off with one another. And have this one stop before this one. I'm going to make the bottom of this one a little bit darker, that it starts to come forward a little bit more than this one does. But I am going to add a few dark passages on the tree here so that it kind of just has change of value in the bark. And I want to make this one a little bit more dark here, that it comes out. And I'm going to add a little bit of manganese to this. So every color I've been using is in or on the trees. So you don't separate the trees from the woods that much. And then back here, I'm going to put a smaller tree that comes down. And just sort of let it tail off. And I'm going to add a little bit of green in here that's a little bit darker. And then I'm going to stop. So you start to see the forest appear because of the trees. It's a matter of having the right values and colors in for the masses, and then you put the trees in. But I am adding a little bit of manganese. I'm going to wipe the brush off here. It's a little bit too wet. I'm going to add a little bit of straight manganese to some of the tree trunks over here. Like so. So we begin to see the woods now. So I'm going to stop right there. So what I did is I made this darker in here. I made this darker down here with the same colors, only a little bit lighter in wash, so there's more water. Then I started working this area in here to where this was darker, and I need to make it a little bit more expressive later on by adding some more texture. And I pulled out a slight path in between here to help lead the eye into the woods a little bit more. But now it's starting to come together as a forest scene and not just foliage flying all over the place. And I am going to clean my sponges out. I'll be right back.
I gave her a half hour in there.
Okay, I'm back. Any questions?
Down to the side, when you get your paints, do
Yeah.
you just have a blob of paint of each color out, or?
Yes, I always put out fresh paints when I need to, and it looks like this.
Okay, alrighty.
So I have my cool colors over here, my warm
Mm.
colors over here.
Okay, thank you.
And that changes with some paintings I do.
Mhm.
I just got done with a commission that required, I just happened to have it, but it required having, I'll show you on the iPad, it required having that color right there.
Oh,
Aqua color, which
okay.
I don't normally use, but I was doing a scene with a boat in it. And the
Mhm.
boat had this bright aqua color in it. And I had to reproduce that into this guy's commission.
Mhm. Oh,
I'll show you in a second here. And now that he's seen the painting, he liked it a lot, which was a good thing.
mhm.
But this was the commission.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Wow.
And the picture of the boat that he gave me cut off the front part, and I had to leave other things out that were moving around in there. But that's what I ended up with.
Mhm.
And it's on the lake that I had the workshop on.
Hmm.
Another portion of the lake, but it was there.
It was his father's boat.
That was his father's boat that he wanted painted. So
Nice.
Oh, uh-huh.
So Dale, here's where I am.
just a
I
minute.
did,
Hang on.
my trunks over here are not integrated into the background. Should I do something about that? I
Let's
can't make this. Hang on. See, there's a separation.
you could bring up, I brought some of these other blue greens over into here to kind
Uh-huh.
of soften that transition from here to here.
Okay. Yeah.
See if you can get that in there dry brushed.
Okay. So dry brush in some.
I used the manganese blue, the yellow, and a little bit of the green, a tiny bit.
Okay. Focus on this area in here.
Yes, yes,
Is that
correct.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
this needs to be worked out a little bit more in here, which I'll show you what we're going to do.
Okay.
Foreground needs a little bit more work, but I'm hesitating about rushing forward on it because if you don't sit there and look at it for a while and debate what you need to do with it, you can make mistakes. So that's this portion of the painting, you kind of go along and you go extremely slow.
Okay.
The beginning of the painting is always quick, and then there's the middle where you're slowing the process down. And then the last part I could spend another hour on by just doing small things.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. But the idea is that I'm being a little bit more impressionistic about it. And I'm always looking at the time we have together so that I'm getting you to understand as much as I possibly can. And details are always last anyways. And you can see that the trees off to the right are very loose and kind of airy. I'm going to strengthen up a couple of them to help balance off the right-hand side, but you start off lighter and you go to darker, and then you add the detail and see what you actually need to do. But I always tell students it's not a race. Take your time when you're doing this. Now, as I do sometimes, I may go ahead and do more work on this after class, but I'll videotape that and it will be also sent to you. And that will probably be on the way up while Denise is going up for pizza and more materials. Remember to make sure he pays, though, dear.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna bring this up again.
Yeah. Okay.
So that manganese helped.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. So what should I work on next?
What I need to do in the next phase that I didn't see this because I was talking, but I do that quite often. These 3 trees here are evenly spaced.
Uh-huh.
I have to break that up. And I see some of your trees are evenly spaced.
That's what I thought too.
Try to get it to be a little bit more random.
Okay.
Because you go out in the woods and they're not evenly spaced. They're where they grow and close together, further apart.
Yeah.
They're all different back there. And it's amazing with the light of the day on how the values and the temperatures change in the woods.
Yeah. Okay. So go ahead and just put more trunks in order to get the variety.
Yeah, some
Is that-
thin ones back in here. I'm going to add a couple thin ones, probably right out here. I have a tree there, but it's not breaking up the area enough.
Yeah. Okay. Should I wait for you or just go ahead and start throwing in trunks?
Wait.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
See where it goes.
Yeah. Okay.
How you doing, Janet? Okay? Getting there? I don't want to rush you. Take your time. Or as my father-in-law said, take your time, just hurry up. No, I'm just kidding.
I was finishing up the previous step.
Okay, let's see.
So I just finished the previous step and have not yet started this one.
Okay.
So that's where it's at.
All right. Good. I like what you got there. So continue on. I'll wait a little bit and we'll continue. We got time.
Well, if everybody's ready, I'm fine with moving on.
Are you sure?
Mhm.
All right.
For sure.
So where'd you hang the painting in your house?
We didn't yet, but we're probably hanging it in our bedroom, in
Okay.
like the hallway between the bedroom and the bathroom, the master bathroom. There's it looks so cool there. So we just got to hang it now.
Okay,
I
good.
think that's where we're leaning toward. We identified so many places. It's an awesome piece.
Thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
I'm glad you got it because
We love it.
good. Unfortunately, like I told you, the fella that gave me the picture to paint never saw my painting finished. He had a heart attack in his car and died. But this guy was an awesome painter of harbors and boats, and he tossed me the picture. Said, "See what you can do with that." And he called me son.
And
Aww.
he didn't start painting till after he had retired.
He what? Oh, yeah. This particular guy, he was 82 when he passed away, but he did not start painting until he was in his mid 60s and retired from somewhere in the advertising world, printing or something. I forgot what he did, but he just excelled at the oil paints and could paint a full painting in 2.5 hours and do a magnificent job.
Wow.
I didn't hold it against him that he is an oil painter, but you know. Okay. Let's go back and take a look at where we need to go. And I'll get a picture of this because I'll end up getting scolded. Okay. Now, what we have to examine is mostly this over here because we need to get these subtle darks in here and a little bit back there that helps lead the eye. Like I say, the path is something that will help lead the eye. And I think it's important to have it for two reasons. It helps break this area up in here a little bit, and it leads the eye, as I said. So we're going to continue by working this area here and by making some of these things a little bit darker, which will push out the light. Lights will always come forward, darks will always recede. So it's a matter of teasing in those darks and not making them too dark. And I'm not using a lot of, I've only used 2 brushes in this painting, this one and this one. So it's just a matter of teasing things in at this point. So you don't need a lot of brushes. I have 5 brushes I use quite a lot, but I don't use them all the time or at the same time. So I'm taking the manganese blue, a little bit of the sap green, and I'll ease in on the dark. So I'm going to tap the brush off just a little bit. And I'm going to start right in here. I'm going to worry about the trees a little bit later. And as I said before, your paint will dry up to 50% lighter. So you got to kind of watch this dry a little bit. And again, I'm going to make sure that things remain softer in the background, but you start to see this come out a little bit now. And I'm going to add a little bit more green to that and a little bit of the burnt sienna, just the tip of my brush, minor little thing. You can see that the pigment changed ever so slightly there. And then I'm going to dry brush in. And all the little trees I will add in this time too. So it's a lot of little spaces I'm breaking up and some secondary large spaces in here that need to be pushed back. So these will be pushed back a little bit further. And it's starting to take the shape in which I was looking for. I am looking at the photograph to a certain point, but I am not following it. I'm allowing the painting to tell me what it needs, not the photograph. So we never paint the photograph, we paint the painting. So this is starting to move back and have a little bit more depth to it. And it's a lot of small brush strokes, nothing too large. It's all a lot of dry brushing at this point. I'm going to take a little bit of the yellow here and mix it in with that. And I'm just trying to get enough depth teased into this. I need to tone this down over here because I don't want my eye going up there with any type of interest of light or intense color. And you could follow along with this a certain amount of time and just overwork it. So I'm putting down a little bit, then I'm adding a little bit. I'm teasing in certain things that need to be put in. Showing with a little bit more light is coming in here. Not the same all the way across though. I'm going to add a little bit more light showing through the leaves there. Like this. Then I'm going to come into the foreground a little bit. And I'm going to take the sap green and the ultramarine blue. And I want to add a little bit more description in the foreground here. I'm going to run a shadow across the path here and there. And while this is still wet, I'm going to tease in a few more extra darks in there. Soften them out. Add a little bit of ultramarine blue for some areas in here. Dry brush it in for a little bit of texture. Then I'll be working on the trees shortly. I need to lean this up just a little bit more. Then I'll fix the trees, and then I'm going to go in and show you how to use a little bit of the white gouache with the color and explain why we do it or why we want to do it. But now we're starting to get a better looking canopy of yellow leaves. Like so. Because I want this painting to be kind of on the softer side, nothing really bold going on too much. And I am going to lift out a little bit more on this path here, right here, and I have it turn the corner and go behind some things here. Don't want to make it too prominent, but I still want it to be noticeable. All right, now I'm going to go in and I'm going to finally use my smaller brush and my Chinese brush here. And I am going to make a couple of trees a little bit more dominant than I did in the beginning. Starting with this one right here. This will help lead the eye back a little bit more. Now, as it goes up, I'm going to allow it just to be the lightness that it was, because as it goes up, it's grabbing a little bit more light from up there. I am going to strengthen this tree that's next to it here. Like so, and I'm going to strengthen this tree a little bit. And I need to put a tree in here to break this up. So I am going to put it off over here, not in the middle, because that would then divide it equally, but I'm going to put it more off to this side, because this one, it would equal this combination if I did that one here. So I'm going to make this a little bit more off to the right. And I'm going to use the smaller brush so that I can control it better. And then just sort of let it disappear right there. And I'm going to darken in a few of these things here. Because we have a lot more trees to put in here and there. That's starting to divide it a little bit more nicely. Now I'm going to take the green with that blue mixture and a little bit of yellow. And I'm going to strengthen a little bit of these trees here. Especially when it comes down to the bottom, I'm going to add a little bit more blue to it. Like so. I'm going to bring it forward a little bit more. I like it down closer. That way we have a movement like this. Soften it down there. I'm going to bring a little bit more blue into it in certain areas here. Just as a dark. Keeping it kind of loose, more casual looking. And then I'm going to take the manganese blue and I'm going to mix it in with the green here that I have. And I'm going to give this a little bit more texture. And then take the smaller brush that's wet and I'm going to kind of soften it up a little bit here and there. Now, what we need is a little bit of smaller trees in this area here, a little bit over here, to show that it's a little bit more populated with trees. So I'm going to take this tree right here with more manganese blue in it, dry the brush off a little bit and bring it down so it's got kind of a bluish green glow to it. Darken it at the bottom. Couple places in there. And then soften it with the larger brush here so that now this is beginning to have a little bit different movement on it. Now I'm going to take a paper towel and I'm going to lift a little bit right here. And I'm going to add a little bit of darkness on this tree here and then kind of soften it out with the paper towel. Now, branches and so forth, I do have even a smaller brush. It's a rigger. It's very long and narrow, which I'll use in a minute. But I want to put in a few more thinner trees in here. So I'm keeping a paper towel handy. And I'm trying to do it well placed. I don't want to do it willy-nilly. They'll be soft, they'll be dark. But it's just added some will be noticed and some will not be noticed, but they're there enough to balance off a few things here and there. But they have to be to fill in the woods a little bit more. And I'm going to use a little bit warmer color. So I'm taking the burnt sienna with the green and then gray it down quite a bit. And I'm going to start putting in smaller trees over here that will help support in combination with the larger trees here. And if they're too dark, you can always go in and soften them a bit or anticipate that they're going to be lighter in value eventually. And then this one over here that I put in originally, I'm going to emphasize more. And then
Okay.
other trees that go along in here. So now it's starting to take a hold a little bit better. And I'm going to darken this one in right there. Let the pigment sit there just a minute. Bring it down to where I want it. And then after it sits there a minute, it will sink into the paper. Then I'll soften it just a slight bit. Now, with the toothbrush, before I put on branches, I'm going to take some of these darker greens here and I'm going to tease in very softly down at the bottom because I don't want any hard edges down at the bottom so much. Going to darken in a few of the browns that are in here with the burnt sienna. Like
They
so.
have been marking, so trying
What's
to put
that?
them out.
What was that?
Yeah. Oh, I was talking, my husband just came home and I told him I had to put the dogs out.
Oh, yep, the dogs have to go out once in a while.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to put on a few branches with the rigger here. And it's a very narrow brush. Just to give this a feeling, we need some branches in the woods. Otherwise, I wouldn't have anything to clean up in the spring. But not too many, because if you overdo it, it will detract. But this helps also to give your painting a little bit more depth of overlapping shapes. I don't want to do too much because it does get busy with that. Now, a few more things with the foreground. Oh, we're doing real good on time. I'm going to take a little bit of that burnt sienna and I'm going to add a little bit of darkness in on the foreground here. So it gives a little bit of texture, some fallen branches and so forth. And I'm being very casual about it. And I'm going to take my big brush here before we go into the gouache, and I'm going to wet it, and I'm going to pull out all the moisture, and I'm going to lift out a few lone poplars or birches. This will help add a little bit of variety of trees in the woods. Not a lot, just a few. And I'm not making them real bold. I'm just subtly putting them in that it becomes noticed only as you look a little bit closer to the painting for the second or third time. All right, now I'm going to use just a little bit of gouache. And when you use white paint, you have to use color with it. You can't just use white paint. So when you add white paint to a color, I know Janet's heard this a number of times. When you add white paint to a color, it makes it lighter in value. It makes it less intense and not as bright or pure looking. And third, it cools the color down. Okay, because white will cool anything down. So I'm going to take just a little bit of white just to show you how to accentuate a few things. And I'm going to take the yellow here along with the white, and I'm adding a little bit of the manganese to this also. So I've got a very light value here. And I'm going to tap it off, and I'm going to add, whoop, that's too light. There we go. And I'm going to tap it off on my brush here. And I'm going to add a few lighter leaf passages in here. Take off more paint. Had too much paint on it. So I'm kind of teasing this in here just as to grab the eye a little bit more over the path, a little bit down here. I'll take that and spread it out just a little bit. Soften it that much more. There we go. And kind of dry brush it on. So it's places that are getting a little bit more light in color. So I add a little bit more yellow to that because it's too light. And you can paint over things, not that this is what is intended, but it's not meant to correct things, but it's meant to highlight a few of the colors that are in here. And it'll also make some of the darks appear a little bit darker. And like I say, you want to use this sparingly if you're going to use it. And don't use it to correct a mistake, even though the temptation is there. I'm adding a little bit of light back in here that the forest floor is allowing to doppel the light through there a little bit more. But it's just a little bit. I'm just adding it to show you what can be done with it. I'm going to take a little bit of the manganese and some of the white. A little bit more here. There we go. And I can use this as an accent color on top of what I've already done to add a little bit of bluish flowers or forget-me-nots along the path. And I'm only using it on and around the focal point, which is right in this area here. Just a little bit, nothing too much. And I'm using my finger to soften things just a little bit. And this just kind of feeds out into this dark area here and creates a little bit of interest. And I'm just teasing it in certain areas here that I feel could use a little bit more attention. Not a lot, but just a little. Okay, let me take the tape off and see where we're at. Whether I do any more work to this or not, I have to look at it for a while. It's always nice to look at your painting when you feel you're done. Look at it for a while and come back with a fresh eye and decide, is this something else I need? Or should I just leave it alone? But this is where we ended up with the abstract patterns of things at this point. I didn't do too much down here for the fact that it would draw your attention too far down. You notice that the manganese blue with the white in it has kind of faded, which I was anticipating it would. And here's where we ended up. So having all these trees over here kind of soft and kind of falling back a little bit made these a little bit stronger being darker, but my eye is still coming into here. And that's what I was looking for. So let me prop this up on the water bucket here so you can see it up closer. Now, what would make it even stronger focal point is have a couple of people or a person coming through the woods right about in here. So if you could stay in that pose, Janet, I'll draw you in.
Or a deer.
Or a deer. We got enough of them around here.
Or a chipmunk.
Have to be a big chipmunk to be. We have supposedly a couple fawns wandering around in the woods here because they just went through their birth, but we haven't seen
Saw a
any.
lot when we were there. A lot of them.
You sit.
You see fawns
They look pretty young
with
when we were
spots?
in Minocqua.
Did you see them with spots on?
No, they weren't quite that young. We've seen those here.
They don't get rid of their spots
Growth.
until fall or late fall. By winter, the spots are gone and they're turning darker with mom to kind of blend into the woods.
Yeah. That came out nice.
I give it a C plus.
Well, thank you. I'm gonna go.
Okay.
I won't be here next week. I have to be in a meeting. Ugh.
Okay. All right. You take care and we'll send you the video, Janet.
Sounds great.
Have a good weekend.
Great to meet you too.
Okay, good, yeah. See you in 2
Bye.
weeks then.
You
Or
got
3,
it.
whatever it is, yeah.
All right.
Okay,
You take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Any questions before we leave, young ladies?
Oh, so this is as far as I've got.
Okay, good.
What would you do
Some of
next?
the trees in the background back here, as they go up and they're
More,
reaching for light,
yeah,
you can
in
take
that
a
area.
damp brush and soften them a bit.
Okay,
Okay, and
Yeah.
That's pretty.
and a little bit of gouache if you want. But I would take that path and I would kind of narrow it up a little bit, make it more softer looking because it
Okay.
got a path here that took a big upturn, and you want to kind of
see.
just sort of lazy going back, and it just sort of disappears.
okay.
But-
So more tree suggestions
I
in
would
kind of
bring
the
in
middle,
all this
and
soft dark in here, Judy.
yeah,
Bring
yeah.
that in here so that there's a softer transition from this very dark into
Uh-huh.
over here. I have a lot more light showing.
Okay,
It's almost being blinded by the light over there. With
yeah,
the sunlight that comes in the fall is pretty incredible.
okay. I'll see what I can do.
All right.
Yeah. No, okay, and so thank you.
All right, Denise, do you have any questions?
Well, no, but I'll stick that. So that's what mine.
Okay,
Ended
not a
up
bad start. You needed to use more yellow, but
Uh-huh.
not bad at all for your first attempt.
Yeah.
And it takes time. Once you get the right paints, it will be
Yeah.
easier on you. And what kind of paper are you using?
It's a 300-pound something.
Indigo
So
Arches.
or arches? Is it indigo or arches?
I would have to find it and look. I
That's all right.
think it's archers.
Okay.
But
Yeah, Fabriano is better than arches by far. The reason being is that the sizing that they use to hold the fibers together like this, then they spray it with that so that it is protected and allows you to float your color longer. So if you don't have that on the paper, your pigment sinks in right away and you can't manipulate it.
Okay.
So arches try to stay away with, but if you have it, use it until it's gone.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay?
Yes.
So any other questions before we leave?
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you though.
Well, you're
And
welcome.
I'll see if I can rope in a couple more students.
Oh, yeah,
And
that's fine.
regardless, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. See you next week.
Next week, yes.
Okay, very
Okay.
good.
Have a good weekend. Enjoy your pizza, Denise.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.